Hello, my name is Ronaldinho, and I love telling tales. Today, I will tell you a story about an old man and a simple sandwich. This is not just about bread or fillings. No, this story is about feelings, kindness, and the little things in life that can mean a lot. There was a man named Mr. Harold, 89 years old, with a gentle smile and eyes that still carried the light of many memories. Mr. Harold was no ordinary old man. He had lived through wars, raised a family, and traveled places that some people only dream about. His bones were now weak, but his spirit was still young. Every wrinkle on his face held a story, each twinkle in his eye showed the kindness he carried inside. One sunny morning, Mr. Harold put on his best sweater and hat. His hat was a little too big, slipping down over his forehead, but he didn't mind. He shuffled carefully with his walking stick, heading to the small cafe down the street. This cafe, with its wooden tables and warm smell of coffee, was his favorite place to visit. It made him feel alive, sitting among people, hearing chatter, and watching life go by. Inside the cafe, Mr. Harold approached the counter slowly, leaning on his stick for support. There was a young girl behind the counter. She was new, probably in her 20s, and her fingers tapped quickly on the cash machine as if they were dancing. Mr. Harold smiled kindly at her and said in a soft voice, "Can I have a simple sandwich, please? Just bread, butter, and some ham. If you have it." His voice was as polite as an old gentleman's could be. But the young girl gave him a strange look, a little like someone who had never seen kindness wrapped in an old sweater. "We don't do that kind of sandwich here," she said, her tone flat. "Our sandwiches are more fancy." She looked around as if trying to signal someone else to deal with him. Mr. Harold's smile faded slightly, but he stayed calm. "I don't need fancy, dear," he said softly. "Just something simple. I'll pay for it." Of course, he patted his coat pocket, where a few coins jingled. His request was not grand, only for a little piece of happiness between two slices of bread. The young girl sighed loudly. "Sir, maybe you'd like to try our signature avocado toast with truffle oil instead." She sounded annoyed now, and some customers nearby began to turn their heads. The cafe suddenly felt quieter, the air thicker. Mr. Harold looked down at his hands, feeling small in a world that was rushing too fast for him. He cleared his throat, still polite. "Just bread and butter," he whispered one more time, hoping for a little kindness. But the girl rolled her eyes and smirked, as if serving a sandwich to an old man was beneath her. "That's not on our menu," she said louder than necessary. A few customers laughed softly under their breath. Mr. Harold felt his face flush with embarrassment. His old hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from the sting of humiliation. He had lived through storms, battles, and hardships, but a simple sandwich request made him feel more invisible than ever. The laughter in the cafe spread like ripples on a pond, echoing in his heart. What made people so cruel sometimes? Mr. Harold wondered silently. When did the world become a place where kindness was hard to find? He was not asking for much, a little bread, some butter, and maybe a kind word. But today, it seemed, that was too much to ask. Still, Mr. Harold did not argue. He smiled politely, though it hurt inside. "It's all right," he said gently, and with a small nod, he turned to leave. His old shoes shuffled against the floor, each step feeling heavier than the last. A few people watched him go, but no one said anything. No one stood up to offer help or kindness. The young girl shrugged and went back to her tasks as if nothing had happened. Outside, the sun was still shining, but to Mr. Harold, the day felt colder. He sat down on a wooden bench near the cafe, pulling his hat down low over his eyes. It was not just the sandwich that made him sad. It was the feeling of being forgotten, of not belonging in a world that once felt familiar to him. As he sat there, he thought about his younger days. There was a time when people treated each other kindly. He remembered the bakery on the corner where Mrs. Jenkins would hand out warm bread to children without a second thought, and the little diner where strangers would sit together and chat like old friends over simple meals. Those were good days when people cared. But Mr. Harold also knew something important. The world could still change if only people remembered how to be kind. Little things mattered, like a smile, a kind word, or a simple sandwich made with care. He closed his eyes, hoping that one day someone would remember this too. As Mr. Harold sat quietly on the bench, watching the world move around him, the cafe door swung open with a cheerful jingle. A young boy, maybe 10 years old, came running out, clutching a cookie in each hand. His shoes scuffed against the sidewalk, and his laughter bubbled in the air like warm music. Mr. Harold smiled faintly at the boy, remembering his own grandson, Peter, who used to giggle just like that. But Peter was all grown up now, with a busy job in another city, too far away to visit often. Memories of fishing trips and bedtime stories flickered through Mr. Harold's mind like scenes from an old film reel. As he adjusted his hat again, he noticed a woman leaving the cafe with a tray of coffees. She glanced in his direction, pausing briefly. Their eyes met for a second. She gave a small, polite smile, but then quickly looked away, hurrying off to wherever she needed to be. Moments like these were tiny windows into people's lives, so close yet distant. Then, something unexpected happened. A young man with messy hair and a worn leather jacket stepped out of the cafe. He held a sandwich in his hand, a simple one, with ham and butter peeking from between two soft slices of bread. The man hesitated for a moment, scanning the street, until his eyes landed on Mr. Harold sitting quietly on the bench. He walked over slowly. "Hey there, sir," the young man said, holding out the sandwich. "I noticed you didn't get what you asked for inside. I asked them to make this one special for you." Mr. Harold blinked, surprised by the gesture. His fingers trembled slightly as he accepted the sandwich. "Thank you, son," he whispered, his voice soft with gratitude. "You didn't have to do that." The young man grinned. "It's just a sandwich, right?" he said with a wink. "But everyone deserves to feel heard." For the first time that day, Mr. Harold felt warmth return to his heart. It wasn't just the sandwich, it was the kindness wrapped inside it, the sense that someone had noticed him and cared. He patted the bench beside him. "Join me for a moment, won't you? It's always nicer to share." The young man hesitated briefly, but then sat down with a friendly smile. They talked, and the conversation flowed easily, as if they had known each other for years. Mr. Harold told him stories about his younger days, about working in a tiny bookstore, meeting the love of his life, and the adventures he'd had along the way. The young man, in turn, shared his dreams, struggles, and hopes for the future. Time seemed to slow down for a while. The noise of the cafe and the busy street faded into the background as two strangers, one old, one young, found connection over a simple sandwich. As they sat there, more people began to notice them. A woman carrying groceries smiled warmly. A man walking his dog gave them a friendly nod. It was as if kindness, like a quiet spark, was starting to spread. The young man finished the last bite of his sandwich and turned to Mr. Harold. "You know, I think the world would be a better place if more people slowed down like this," he said thoughtfully. Mr. Harold chuckled softly. "I think you're right, son. Sometimes all we need is a little kindness and maybe a simple sandwich." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind that only happens when people understand each other without needing too many words. Then the young man stood up, stretching his arms. "I've got to run, but I'm glad we met, sir." Mr. Harold smiled warmly. "I am too. Thank you again." The young man gave a small salute and walked off, disappearing into the flow of people on the street. Mr. Harold watched him go, feeling lighter than he had in a long time. He looked down at the sandwich in his hands, took a small bite, and let the taste of simple joy fill him. It wasn't just a sandwich, it was a reminder that there was still goodness in the world, waiting to be found. As Mr. Harold finished the last bite of his sandwich, he leaned back on the bench, feeling comforted in a way that had nothing to do with food. The quiet hum of the street wrapped around him, and for the first time that day, the world felt less lonely. Just as he was about to rise and head home, a little girl with pigtails and a bright yellow dress skipped toward him, holding a small red balloon. She stopped in front of him, looking up with curious eyes. "Hi, mister," she chirped. "Why are you sitting here all alone?" Mr. Harold chuckled softly, tipping his hat. "Well, I suppose I was waiting for someone like you to stop by." The girl giggled, her balloon bobbing gently in the breeze. "My name's Lily. What's yours?" "Harold," he answered warmly. "It's nice to meet you, Lily." Lily tilted her head. "Do you like balloons?" she asked, her eyes wide with innocence. Mr. Harold smiled. "I think I do. They remind me of birthdays and happy days." Without a second thought, Lily extended her red balloon toward him. "Here, you can have it," she said brightly. "I've got another one at home." Mr. Harold's heart swelled at the small act of kindness. He accepted the balloon with a grateful smile. "Thank you, Lily. This is the best gift I've received all day." Lily grinned, pleased with herself. "Okay, bye now," she said cheerfully before skipping off to join her mother, who stood waiting by the cafe entrance. Mr. Harold watched her go, the balloon string held loosely in his hand. Moments like these, simple, sweet, and unexpected, were treasures he carried with him, more valuable than gold. Suddenly, the door of the cafe jingled again, and out walked the girl who had refused to make the simple sandwich earlier. Her face was flushed with embarrassment, and she clutched a small paper bag nervously in her hands. She saw Mr. Harold on the bench and approached hesitantly, biting her lip. "Excuse me, sir," she began awkwardly. I wanted to apologize for earlier. I wasn't very kind." She held out the bag with both hands. "I made you a sandwich just the way you wanted. Bread, butter, and ham." Mr. Harold looked at her with gentle eyes, surprised but touched by her effort. "Thank you, my dear," he said kindly, accepting the bag. "We all have our bad moments. It's what we do after that matters." The girl smiled shyly, clearly relieved by his forgiveness. "I hope you enjoy it." "I know I will," Mr. Harold replied warmly. "Would you like to sit for a moment?" He patted the bench beside him. She hesitated but then nodded, sitting down next to him. For a few minutes, they sat in peaceful silence, watching people pass by. "You know," Mr. Harold said after a while, "life is a bit like making sandwiches. Sometimes we try too hard to make them fancy, but it's the simple things that fill us up the most." The girl smiled softly. "I think I understand what you mean." Just then, a man walking by with a guitar slung over his back stopped and strummed a few playful chords. "Hey, folks," he said with a grin. "Mind if I play a little tune for you?" "Not at all," Mr. Harold replied, his eyes twinkling. "Music makes everything better." And so, the man began to play, a gentle melody that floated through the air like sunshine. A few passers-by slowed down to listen, some even swaying slightly to the rhythm. A small crowd began to gather, drawn in by the simple joy of the moment. The girl beside Mr. Harold leaned back, feeling lighter than she had in days. It was strange, she thought, how kindness could bloom unexpectedly like a flower growing between cracks in the pavement. The guitarist played on, and the little red balloon bobbed cheerfully in the air beside Mr. Harold. For a moment, the world seemed to pause, wrapped in music, warmth, and quiet understanding. And now, dear listener, the story flows on like a river. Will more strangers join them, adding their own melodies to this little moment? What new kindnesses will spring from this small gathering? Hello, I am your storyteller, and today I will tell you about a very special topic. Why personality is important. It's a story that involves friends like James, Amelia, Daniel, Mia, Robert, and many others. We will talk about how our personality shapes our lives, how it makes us stronger, and how we can improve it. James was a young boy living in a small town. He was kind and gentle, but often felt ignored by his classmates. Even though he was a bright student, he didn't have many friends. One day, his teacher, Ms. Charlotte, told him, "James, you have a good heart, but you need to show confidence in yourself. Your personality can make a difference in your life." James thought about her words deeply. One afternoon, James met Amelia, who was new to his school. She was shy, and her eyes looked sad. James asked her, "Why do you look so upset?" Amelia replied softly, "I don't fit in." "People don't notice me." James remembered what Ms. Charlotte said and smiled at Amelia, saying, "You have a beautiful smile. Let's be friends and help each other." And just like that, they became good friends, supporting each other. Amelia and James worked on their personality together. They started by looking in the mirror every day and smiling at themselves. They spoke kind words to their reflection, saying, "I am strong, I am smart, I am kind." These small words gave them the courage to face their fears. One day, when James was feeling low, Amelia said, "Remember our words. You are strong." James nodded, feeling a tear roll down his cheek, but this time it was a tear of hope. English was a big part of their journey. To improve their personality, they practiced speaking English every day. James used to say, "Learning English helps us talk to more people. It opens doors and makes us feel confident." They read books and watched videos, learning new words and phrases that made them feel powerful. Daniel, their friend, joined them and said, "Hey, you guys are improving. I want to learn too." Together, they learned how to listen carefully, speak clearly, and understand others' feelings. They made small goals like talking to one new person every day or saying thank you with a smile. One day, Robert, another friend, said, "I was afraid to speak in front of the class, but after watching you, I feel I can do it too." Hearing this, James and Amelia felt so happy. They knew they were making a change. Amelia had a moment when she cried. She said, "I was once so alone, and now I have friends who believe in me." James gently put his hand on her shoulder and said, "It's because of your beautiful personality, Amelia. You made us all feel special." Amelia wiped her tears and said, "I never thought my smile could be so powerful. Our personality is like a light inside us. It can make us shine even on the darkest days. If you are kind, helpful, and strong, people will always remember you." Just like how Daniel became more confident when he started helping others, or how Mia's laughter made everyone smile, even when they were feeling low. Improving your personality is a journey, not a destination. It takes time, but you can start today by being more kind, speaking with a smile, and listening with your heart. Speak English to connect with the world, to share your thoughts, and to understand others. Remember, a simple hello can change someone's day. Think of times when you were sad and a kind word made you smile. That's the power of a good personality. It touches hearts, makes friends, and builds a better world. When Thomas said to Amelia, "You helped me see the good in myself," Amelia felt like she was the happiest girl in the world. If you want to improve your personality, start by believing in yourself. Use English as a tool to open your heart to the world. Talk to yourself in the mirror, read beautiful stories, watch inspiring videos, and most of all, be patient with yourself. Like Benjamin once said, "It's okay to make mistakes, they help us grow." James, Amelia, and their friends continued to work on their personality. They learned that being polite, honest, and cheerful made a big difference. Even when life was tough, they never gave up. And whenever they felt low, they used English to express their feelings, which helped them understand each other better. At the end of each day, James would say to his friends, "Let's keep growing, learning, and smiling," and they all knew that their journey of improving their personality was a journey of becoming better people. Amelia's journey with her friends did not stop there. Every day was a chance for them to learn something new about themselves and each other. One evening, when the sun was setting, they all sat together under a big tree in the park. Mia, who was usually quiet, spoke up. She said, "You know, I used to think that I was just a small person in a big world. But now I feel like I have a voice, like I matter." James smiled at Mia and said, That's because you found your confidence. Your personality is like a flower, it blooms when you care for it. Mia felt a tear of joy, knowing that her friends saw the real her, the person she always wanted to be. As the days went by, they helped each other become more confident in speaking English. James used to say, English is not just a language, it's a key. A key that can open many doors in life. They practiced by telling each other stories in English. They laughed at their mistakes, corrected each other with kindness, and grew stronger in their skills. Daniel shared a memory from his past when he was so nervous about speaking in front of his class that his hands shook. He said, "I felt so alone that day. But now, with all of you by my side, I feel like I can stand up and speak to the world." His words made everyone emotional, and they all realized how far they had come together. One rainy day, Amelia was feeling sad. She told her friend, Ava, "Sometimes I still feel like I'm not good enough, like I don't belong." Ava held her hand gently and said, "Amelia, you belong with us. You are more than enough. Your personality lights up our lives." Amelia's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of love and gratitude. She hugged Ava and whispered, "Thank you for believing in me." The group decided to set small challenges for themselves to improve their personality. They promised to do one kind thing every day, like helping someone in need or saying a kind word to a stranger. William, who had always been a bit shy, took the first step. He gave a heartfelt compliment to a new student in their class. The smile on the new student's face made William feel like he had won a big prize. John, another friend in the group, shared his tip. He said, "I used to struggle with my thoughts, but then I started writing them down in English. It helped me understand myself better." His words touched everyone's heart. Writing in English became their new way to express their feelings, to let out their worries, and to celebrate their little victories. One day, while they were sitting in the park, Robert looked up at the sky and said, "You know, our personality is like the sky. Sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's cloudy, but it's always there. We just need to keep believing in ourselves." His words were simple but filled with so much meaning that everyone felt a warmth in their hearts. Amelia thought about the days when she used to be afraid to speak up. She remembered the tears she shed, thinking she was not good enough. But now, surrounded by her friends, she felt like she could do anything. She turned to James and said, "Thank you for helping me see the best in myself." James smiled and replied, "We helped each other. That's what friends do." The journey of improving their personality was not always easy. There were days when they felt like giving up, when the world seemed too big and their problems too heavy. But they never stopped encouraging each other. They learned that real strength comes from within, from believing in who they are. Michael, one of their friends, shared his biggest lesson. He said, "The most important thing I've learned is to love myself. If I don't love myself, how can I expect others to love me?" His words touched a deep part of everyone's heart, and they all nodded in agreement. And then there was a day when Charlotte, who had always been the happiest in the group, broke down in tears. She said, "I always try to be strong, but sometimes I feel like I'm breaking inside." Everyone gathered around her, comforting her, reminding her that it's okay to cry, to feel weak, because that's what makes them human. Learning English helped them in these moments, too. It gave them the words to say when they didn't know how to express their feelings. It helped them write letters to each other, to say "I'm here for you" in a way that touched the heart. Paul, who was the poet of the group, wrote a short poem in English about friendship. It said, "When the night is dark and the road is long, I'll be your light, I'll keep you strong." Day by day, their personalities grew brighter, like stars shining in the night sky. They learned that a good personality is not just about looking good or speaking well, it's about being kind, being real, and never giving up on yourself. It's about helping others see the best in themselves, just like how James and Amelia helped each other. As their story goes on, they know that they will face many challenges in life, but now they have the strength, the confidence, and the heart to face them. They know that their journey of improving their personality will never truly end. It's a path they will walk on for the rest of their lives, learning, growing, and becoming the best version of themselves. What do you think makes a personality truly beautiful? Is it kindness, honesty, or the way we treat others? Let me know your thoughts, and let's keep this story going together.